and welcome to Head to Head. This is Vivica Williams. Recently, I had an opportunity to sit down with Hugues Mingarelli. He's the ambassador for the EU delegation to Ukraine. We spoke about visas, the visa-free regime, Crimea, and about security in general. Let's have a look. So thank you very much for meeting with me today, Ambassador. The first thing I want to ask you is about the visa-free regime for Ukraine. So what are the next steps? What does Ukraine have to do to maintain and keep this visa-free regime?
First of all, I would like to say that it is a well-deserved achievement. The Ukrainian authorities managed to meet 144 benchmarks to get this visa-free regime, and therefore I will say, well done, Ukraine. Second point, there is no doubt that they will manage to maintain this visa-free regime, and for that to happen, Ukraine will have simply to consolidate the reforms which have been already carried out in the fields of rule of law, human rights, freedom of expression, fight against corruption. And I have no doubt that in all these important areas, the Ukrainian authorities will make sure that there is no backtracking.
And this visa-free regime gives Ukrainians an opportunity to travel for tourism and for business. So what do you foresee happening with Ukrainian business and opportunities to grow and to connect with European businesses?
First of all, I would like to stress the fact that since the entry into force of our association agreement, the trade between Ukraine and the European Union has increased, and in particular, Ukrainian export toward the EU market have increased. So we are already on a very positive trend. Tomorrow, when it will be easier for Ukrainian business people to travel to the EU, to participate in exhibitions, shows, to connect with Western European business people, there is no doubt that there will be a positive impact on the trade and investment flows between Ukraine and EU member states. So we expect a very positive impact of this new visa regime.
Let's talk about Crimea and Russia's illegal annexation of the peninsula. The EU did impose sanctions, an import ban on goods, a full ban on investment, and prohibiting tourism services. But we still see businesses investing, and we also see political figures visiting the peninsula. So what is the EU doing to counter this?
The European Union has a very clear and unanimous position regarding Crimea. The annexation of Crimea is a violation of international law, and sanctions will stay in place until Crimea gets back to Ukraine. Now, if some individuals from our member states go to Crimea and try to develop business, it's up to the respective member state to take actions.
So in general, for the European Parliament, as a cohesive action, there's nothing really in plan for the sanctioning of individuals or businesses that do partake in activities.
It's mainly up to member states to take action.
And does the EU have any plans to toughen enforcement of sanctions, especially in response to worsening human rights with the Crimean Tartars?
We discuss with the Russian authorities the deterioration of the human rights situation in Crimea, in particular for the Tatar community, but I'm not aware of any plan to increase the sanction.
Thank you. Well, let's talk a little bit about security. So what do you see Ukraine's role as being on the edge of Europe for security for Europe?
Ukraine is a big country in the center of the European continent, and therefore it's clear that any destabilization of Ukraine represents a security threat for the EU, because we have 4 member states which have land borders with Ukraine, and therefore the security of Ukraine is something which matters a lot to the EU.
And for countries, is there Is there a belief in Europe that Ukraine is, like Poland was considered in the past, the outlier, the border to Europe? Is there a changing idea about how Ukraine is seen as more of this first line against the influx of for this hybrid war, not just being Ukraine's problem?
Yes, we know that this hybrid war against Ukraine matters to the EU as well, because anything which happened to Ukraine could tomorrow happen to other Western European countries. The Baltic states constantly express their fears about this. So we regard really the defense of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine as a very, very important matter to the EU security.
And in the past, you've worked extensively in countries or regions that have experienced conflict. What are some of the parallels you've seen here?
Difficult to speak about parallels with any other example, because in the Balkans, for instance, we had ethnic and religious roots for the conflict. Here I do not see, frankly, roots of this kind. Maybe one could make a parallel with the decolonization process in other parts of the world, with the former colonial power which has some difficulty to accept the sovereignty and independence of the former colonies.
And at this point, you've been in Ukraine for how long now?
For 9 months.
For 9 months. And so what have you seen in Ukraine? What's become some of your favorite things in Ukraine?
I have seen a country which unbelievable human and natural resources, a lot of assets to become an open and democratic country based on a social market economy. But for that to happen, they have obviously to find a solution to this war that they have on their territory, and they have as well to tackle in the firmest possible way the issue of corruption and rule of law.
What's something you like about Kyiv? Something that you've seen in Kyiv that you enjoy?
Kiev is a very green town where you can walk for hours, seeing beautiful things with a lot of terrace during the spring and the summer. So a very nice and pleasant town, without any doubt.
Thank you very much for speaking with us today. Thank you for your answers to all of these questions. And we do look forward to talking with you again in the future. And thank you so much for being here in Ukraine.
Thank you.